Welcome to 5 Minute Mics with Finlos. Today I'm going to be sharing the Sontronics Podcast Pro for its use with vocal recording. It's a passive supercardioid dynamic microphone that is designed for vocal applications, including streaming and podcasting. Like the other microphones made by Sontronics, the Podcast Pro is designed with a vintage aesthetic. Everything you are hearing, except for the comparisons later in the video, is recorded on the Podcast Pro through the Lewitt Connect 6 with no processing. At the time of this recording, it retails for about $150. The mic is designed and manufactured in England. As I stated, it has a vintage design but with modern components. The capsule is housed in a tin can-like cylinder with cutouts which are filled with the plosive filtering mesh. That cylinder is mounted onto a yoke which is also metal and has two tightening screws for adjusting the tilt. The Podcast Pro is easiest to find in black and red, both attractive colors, but there are other vibrant colors available as well. You may have to pay a little bit more for them though. I enjoyed the look of the mic at first, but after having it in hand in person, the cute wore off and eventually shifted into a sense of cheapness, like I was using a toy rather than a piece of professional equipment, which isn't helped by the mic's relative lightweight. The whole thing reminds me a bit of the 512 Audio Limelight, another dynamic mic targeting podcasters and ending up just looking and feeling cheap. It is a little disappointing because Sontronics was so successful with the design of the Corona. Unfortunately, those shortcomings carry over to the sound of the mic as well. I guess it shouldn't be surprising, but the Podcast Pro sounds like I'm talking into a can. The tone is muffled, which I assume comes from absorbent baffling inside the body of the mic. It is also very nasally, despite having boosts in lows and highs. There are no pads or switches on the mic itself, so any tweaking you do will have to be done through processing or EQing, which, without a clean source, is less than ideal. The mic does have a healthy output for a passive dynamic, with my volume on the Lewitt Connect 6 never needing to go above 50%. And because of its supercardioid pickup pattern, it does reject ambient sounds well, and it handles plosives well enough too. Unfortunately, both of these strengths likely have to do with whatever the material is inside the body of the mic that creates such a muffled tone. Ultimately, I think the Podcast Pro is a little too over-designed. It's just trying too hard to be more than it is. It doesn't sound bad. It just doesn't sound like $150 worth of good. If you are getting this mic, it's likely because of the look, and I think it could lend itself to video content with a specific aesthetic that could gain from the style of this design. If you are interested in trying this mic, it will work best for podcasting or maybe singing, but not any recording that requires a pristine, natural sound like voiceover. But for this price, you can find a bevy of options, many for less, with cleaner, more natural, and neutral sounds. Just because you want a mic with a vintage look, that doesn't mean you want your sound to sound like it's antique. Here are a few comparisons of other dynamic microphones so you can hear the Podcast Pro in context. First is the Behringer XM8500, a basic but effective handheld dynamic. We used to fear the lonely road that twisted round the hill. It dipped down to the riverway and past the haunted mill, and then crept on until it reached the churchyard, green and still. Next is the Dynacaster DC-M3, a very affordable broadcast-style dynamic microphone. We used to fear the lonely road that twisted round the hill. It dipped down to the riverway and past the haunted mill, and then crept on until it reached the churchyard, green and still. Now the similarly priced CAD A77, another vintage-looking mic with a very tasteful look. We used to fear the lonely road that twisted round the hill. It dipped down to the riverway and past the haunted mill, and then crept on until it reached the churchyard, green and still. Next is the fellow English Aston Stealth with the onboard mic activator turned off and in voice mode 1. We used to fear the lonely road that twisted round the hill. It dropped down to the riverway and past the haunted mill, and then crept on until it reached the churchyard, green and still. Finally is the Sennheiser MD421 Mark II with the bass roll-off in neutral or music mode. We used to fear the lonely road that twisted round the hill. It dipped down to the riverway and past the haunted mill, and then crept on until it reached the churchyard, green and still. I will include additional audio samples in the details for this video. You can check out my affiliate links to purchase this mic or any of my gear, but I always recommend trying to find pre-owned equipment first. Check me out with this and all my other microphones on the Finlos Lives podcast at finloslives.com. I'd love to hear what you thought about the Sontronics Podcast Pro or any of the mics featured in this video, so leave a comment below. If you appreciate this content, please be sure to like and subscribe. Be kind to your voice.